In this video, we're doing another example on a radical equation. We're going to be solving it. And the first thing that we want to do, just like on the last one, is notice that we have a radical on the right side, and then we just have x plus 1 on the left. So we want to go ahead and we want to square both sides of the equation to get rid of the radical. So I'm going to put first square both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right quick. Now I know to square it because our index is 2, right? There's no number written up here in this little top left corner of the radical, which means it has an index of 2. So it means two numbers were multiplied together to give us this expression. I'm also going to square the left side. And so I can rewrite this now as simply x plus 1 squared is equal to, and on the right side that squaring got rid of our radical, so it just becomes 25 minus 3x. Now just as usual, we do want to combine like terms, move everything over to the left and try to solve this for x. In order to solve this for x, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and FOIL this number that's being squared, this expression that's being squared. So what we're going to do is write this as two binomials being multiplied, which is the same thing as saying x plus 1 squared, right? We're just writing it as the product of two binomials. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down 25 minus 3x. And the second thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and FOIL this. So I'm going to FOIL it. So we simply have x times x, and that's going to give me x squared. Then we have x times 1, which would just give me positive 1x. And then we're going to do the inner, which is 1 times x. It's going to give me another 1x. And the last, right, 1 times 1, which would just give me positive 1. Now in the meantime, this right, we haven't done nothing to this on the right other than just removing it from the radical by squaring it. We're just going to go ahead and bring it down real quick. So I have 25 minus 3x. And now we're just going to continue the process. So at this time, our next step is to combine like terms. So we're going to take our two middle terms right here and put them together. So it's 1x plus 1x. That's going to leave us with simply 2x's. I'll go ahead and bring down the x squared. Let me put a plus sign, right, because it was a positive 1x plus another 1x, so it's positive 2x. And then I'm going to bring down this plus 1 at the end and bring down my expression on the right, 25 minus 3x. So at this point, what I want to do is go ahead and move this negative 3x over to the left side of the equation using inverse operations. So I'm simply going to add 3x to both sides. On the right side, it zeroes out. Right, that's 0, and 2 plus 3 is going to give me 5x's. Now there's not going to be anything to add to this x squared, so I'm just going to bring it down. And now we need to move this 25 on the right side over to the left as well. So that's a positive 25, so I'm going to subtract it, which leaves me with 0, and then subtract it over here. So this is going to be 1 plus negative 25. And remember, you can always put these into calculators if you're not good at adding integers. But 1 plus negative 25 is going to give me negative 24. So notice what we have now is we have this equation written and it's set equal to 0. So we're ready for the next step. The fourth thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to solve it, right? And again, there's multiple methods and ways to solve it, and but I prefer either using the quadratic formula or by factoring it. And in this case, I am going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula again for this one. It makes it very quick. So just remember that your quadratic formula is simply x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And then the values we're going to use is our a value is going to be 1 because it's going to be the number in front of this x squared. our b value is going to be this positive 5 in front of the x, and our c value is going to be this constant value of negative 24. So let's go ahead and substitute those values in real quick. So x equals negative, and I'm just going to set it up with parentheses. That's how I always do it, because this is how I'll be putting it into the calculator. And then I'll fill in the numbers in just a second, so I can make sure I don't get anything mixed up. Alright, now when it comes to the b value, I'm going to circle b. My b value is 5. So I'm going to put a 5 here in place of this b, and put a 5 here in place of this b. And then we have minus 4 times a. My a value is going to be a 1. And that's because for a, right, there's no number in front of x. So since there's no number there, there's always an invisible 1 when you don't see a number present. So I'm going to put a 1 for my a, and there's an a after the 4, and there's an a after the 2 in the denominator. And then for my c value, letter c, right here, because we already did the a's, c is just going to be negative 24. And now we're going to put this in our calculator, and I'm going to do the positive solution first. When I say the positive, in other words, where I'm adding the radical, I'm going to do that one first. And so I'll write right here, x equals, I'm going to put this 2 times. And I'm going to put just a little plus sign just to remind me this is when I'm adding the radical. Put a little minus sign, that's when I'm subtracting the radical. So I'm going to get my calculator, and I'm going to type it in exactly as it's written. So I'm going to go ahead, hit alpha y equals enter to get my fraction bar, and I'll type in negative parenthesis 5 plus second x squared to get my radical, parenthesis 5 squared, which is my b squared, minus 4 times a times the value of c, which is negative 24. I do want to mention, as you're putting this in, make sure that you are using a minus sign in between the b squared value and the 4, and in between your b value and the radical, you're either using a plus sign or a minus sign, depending on if you're doing the first one or the second one. So I'm going to do 2 times my a value of 1, hit enter. Alright, and that gives me 3. So I'm going to write a 3 right here. So that's one of my solutions. And now I'm going to do the next one. Now I'm going to click up and highlight it, hit enter, go back to the numerator, and all I'm going to do is change that plus sign to a minus sign. So that way I don't have to re-enter everything. And it gives me negative 8. Now, it appears that I have 2 solutions, but notice this video is actually for solving radical equations that have 1 solution. So one of these solutions is going to make a false statement when I substitute it back into the original equation, and that one is I'm going to have to eliminate it because it is not going to be a solution. So we do have to check these every time that we work on them. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make me a box over here where we can check them real fast. I am going to write the original equation right here on top, which the original equation was simply x plus 1 is equal to the square root of 25 minus 3x. Now, I'm going to start by doing my left-hand side of the equation, x plus 1. So over here, so if I have x plus 1, I'm going to go ahead and substitute for x. And I'm going to put my x value. So we're going to check 3 first. I'm going to underline it. We're going to substitute x with a positive 3. And then we have plus 1. And that's going to give me 4. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and use this radical here, right, our right side of the equation, and we're going to substitute for it. So I have the square root of 25 minus 3x. So if I substitute for x, it's going to be 25 minus 3 parenthesis, but instead of an x, I'm going to put a 3, right, because 3 is what we got for our solution. Now if I do the math here, and I'm going to move my camera down just a little bit, what you're going to see is that 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. So this really becomes the square root of 25 minus 9. And 25 minus 9 is going to leave me with 16. So it's the square root of 16. And if I were to put this in the calculator to evaluate it, the square root of 16 is going to be 4. Notice that's the same thing we got when we substituted 3 in for x on the left side of the equation. So this is a true statement, and that is one of our solutions. Tristan. So now we're going to check this equation on the right hand side, but we're going to check it for the solution, which is -8. So that was one of our answers that we had in our calculator. So let's go ahead and put it in and see what happens. So I'm going to substitute for x, right? So we have x plus 1 on the left side of our equation. And so when I substitute a value for x, and I'm going to put a -8 in there, plus 1, -8 plus 1 is going to give me -7. So if this is a solution, when we substitute -8 in place of the x on the right side of the equation, where this radical is, we should also get -7. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we have the square root of 25 minus 3x. We are now going to go ahead and substitute for that x value. Now I have -8. And if I do -3 times -8, that's going to actually give me a positive 24. So we have 25 plus 24, and that's going to give me 49. Now if I take my calculator right and I do the square root of 49, notice it gives me positive 7. And while this looks like it might be correct, I want you to notice that up here, when we do -8 plus 1, it gives us -7. So even though the numbers are similar, right, one's negative and one's positive. So this is actually false. So it is not an answer. So we're just going to cross that one out. Therefore, even though it looked like initially we had 2 solutions, we really only have one solution.